Welcome back to Canadian Justice, where we're discussing the current conflict, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and how the international laws of war and armed conflict might apply. Now, Mr. Cox, the International Criminal Court has now announced that they have started an investigation into the Russian invasion, in fact, dating back years prior to their invasion of Crimea, which is a peninsula in southern Ukraine. What could an investigation lead to ultimately, and what's this going to entail?
That's a really great question because the ICC, the International Criminal Court, it's a treaty-based judicial body, and so it relies on the consensus of states that have ratified, or countries that have ratified the founding treaty, the Rome Statute. Ukraine has not ratified the Rome Statute, so it's not a state party, but it can request that the ICC initiate an investigation, potentially even prosecution.
And to be clear, Russia hasn't ratified it either, correct?
Russia has not either. Now, one kind of interesting development and encouraging development is that states, so there are 123 countries that have ratified the Rome Statute, and Canada is one of them. Many states, including Canada, has recently been announced that the states party have requested that the ICC actually look into crimes in the potentially being committed in Ukraine. So I think this is going to really entail kind of two separate types of international crimes. One would be war crimes. And so this would be the conduct of hostilities, Russian and potentially Ukrainian and other troops who are on the ground or in the territory actually engaged in hostilities. Are those soldiers, are those troops complying with their obligations pursuant to the law of armed conflict? So that would be one aspect of an investigation, potential prosecution. And another aspect will be whether the initial decision to invade Ukraine constitutes a crime of aggression, who is responsible for that, and if people are found responsible, how to bring them before the court.
Now, Mr. Charouz, in the last segment, you expressed some skepticism about the effectiveness of the ICC in dealing with this. What's your concern here?
My concern is, as Mr. Cox was just mentioning, the lack of jurisdiction, particularly given that Russia, A, is not a state party. So that poses a problem. And secondly, it has veto power on the UN Security Council, which is another path by which you would potentially be able to get yourself to the ICC. So I think that poses a real problem. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the ICC is a criminal court, right? And it can't really, even if it got over the jurisdiction problem, it wouldn't be able to do what it does unless it actually has defendants in the docket, right? So until such time that Mr. Putin is arrested, detained, and handed over to The Hague, I'm not really sure that he, who's the main culprit, I would say, of this crime, I don't know if we're necessarily going to get justice from the ICC.
Could he be detained if he was traveling outside of Russia into a party state?
I think that is possible, but again, I think the jurisdictional issues with Russia not being a signatory to the Rome Statute would be tremendous.
Mr. Choli, what's your view on the role that the International Criminal Court can play here? Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the role it can play in helping get redress for some of these really appalling things we've been hearing about during this conflict?
I think, as my predecessors have indicated, there are certainly legal challenges that need to be addressed, including the jurisdiction issue and the fact that Russia has not ratified the convention. But that being said, I think that as in just about every other field of law, I think solutions will be found in an ingenious way in order for crime not to remain unpunished.
Mr. Charouz, I want to chat briefly about the laws of armed conflict. What are some of the things that you've been hearing? Just really briefly, we've got about a minute, and we'll get into it further in the next segment. What are some of the things that might violate some of these rules governing armed conflict in Ukraine?
So the laws of armed conflict, the main document that you would look to would be the Geneva Conventions. And among the key obligations of states there is to protect civilians or not needlessly target civilians. So the news coming out of Ukraine with almost indiscriminate shelling of residential neighborhoods, at least that's the allegation, and it seems to be a credible allegation. I think that's really one of the key concerns about war crimes that are being committed by Russian forces against Ukrainian civilians, and that would constitute a war crime under international law.